I don't know. Have you ever been on a big time podcast? I don't know that. Well, you've been on this one, but you were in the background yelling. And so you're going to have to talk to them on the mic like this, like real close.
Okay, like this?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yep. And you can move this if you want to. So it's not so awkward.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Refresh. We are live on YouTube. Oh, that's me.
Yeah, it is you.
Refresh. Have you ever done any radio or anything? Live on
It's been a while.
YouTube. Fingers Malloy. Oh, that's me.
Yeah, it is you.
Refresh. Have you ever done any radio or anything? Live on...
It's been a while.
It's like a round.
YouTube. I know.
Fingers Malloy. Oh, that's me.
Yeah, it is you.
Refresh. Have you ever done any radio or anything? I could let that go all day.
I know. It's crazy.
What's your opinion of Rob Kendall?
Rob's a nice guy.
You lying ass.
Rob's a nice guy. Rob is the special kid in the class. Like, you love him, you know,
right?
But then you're like, dude, calm down. It's not that bad. Relax.
I love it.
Take some pills.
I gotta have Robbie on.
You have a bigger board than he does.
Oh, thank you.
You have a really nice board.
Thank you. Everybody tells me that. Everyone says I've seen Rob's board, and it's so small.
It is small. I've seen it too. It's pretty small,
especially compared to your board. Your board is much bigger than Rob's.
Yeah, I mean, and his WIBC board doesn't count.
Right. Well, yeah, he didn't pay for that.
Right.
Yeah, but it's also how you use it, and I use my board much better than he uses his. He just rants about, I don't know, makeup. What do they talk about on Chicks on the Right?
I have no idea. Really don't.
All right, here we go. Oh, I needed to get my little intro up. I need to get my email up. I'm out of sorts. I need to remember this thing. Yeah, so good old Rob. I actually got permission to go on WIBC a couple times with Rob and with Abdul, which I was amazed by because I didn't think that they'd let me. But they did. It was very nice of them.
It was nice of them.
Mm-hmm. Shit. I have too many things. Too many things going on right now. It's like I was off 2 weeks ago, and then I was in Philly for Podcast Movement last week, and then it was just like a blue wave hit me yesterday when I returned. Let's go. All right. Almost ready. And so there's no elegant way to start a YouTube. So you end up having 4 minutes of unnecessary BS at the beginning. So let's see here. All right. Okay. Let's go. Here we go.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Anything you'd like to say?
No, go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
I brought a plastic straw. Is that okay?
Welcome to We Are Libertarians. I'm your host, Chris Spangle. We bring you all of the irreverence modern politics deserves while putting people before political parties. We examine current events from a libertarian perspective with the goal of leaving you better informed. Please be sure to rate and review us on iTunes, like us on Facebook, and subscribe on Patreon at WeAreLibertarians.com. In exchange for supporting our program, we give you all kinds of bonus content and free stuff. Please be warned that this show is raw, unedited, and authentic, so sometimes the language is strong and offensive. Harry has a slight chill. I was informed before the show. So normally Harry would be here with me, but Harry has taken to his bed. He says it's a headache and a slight chill. So we wish Harry a speedy recovery. Mark Warner joins me. Mark, I asked him, I said, what are you sick from? Sick of my ass? And he said, if I were sick of your ass, then I'd tell you on the air. So
that's true.
So Harry will be back next week. But with me tonight is Indiana's favorite rhino, the Hoosier State's worst Republican.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Did you wear this atrocious T-shirt that you're wearing to the podcast tonight, Mark Warner, because you were coming on a Libertarian podcast? And your smile tells me whatever is about to come out of your mouth is a lie. Yeah, see, you
by
did.
Accident.
It's
Total.
Not by an accident, my ass. Now, see, what you need to do right now is, so you don't look ridiculous, which you do wearing a Republican T-shirt, go to wearelibertarians.com, and we have brand new T-shirts. Finally. So get yourself some freedom and put it on your body, as opposed to whatever that is. Freedom. That's right.
I mean, I have a plastic straw. Is this okay?
All right. Okay. All right. You're back in.
Okay. I mean, I don't want to break any rules here.
So, yes, Mark is a rhino. We'll talk about Mark in just a moment, but I do want to mention that we finally launched a We Are Libertarians store, which you can find at wearelibertarians.com. Scroll down on the right side, and you will see Shop Now in big red letters. We've got a special T-shirt that is only available till August 5th. It's our launch special T-shirt. So far, we're about 2 away from hitting our goal of 20 for the week, and I'm pretty excited about that because we haven't even promoted it. We've got 3 different designs. There's ladies' tees, got a couple posters. We're just testing out Teespring, which is a company that is affiliated with one of our co-hosts. So we're testing it out. So I want to know what you think about them in particular. But in the meantime, please. You have at least until the end of August to get your We Are Libertarians merch. For the first time ever, we're doing merchandise. Many of you have asked for T-shirts, and as you know, Dear Leader is generous and thorough, so I provide. So I'm very excited about that. So this episode is brought to you by the We Are Libertarians store. Go check that out. Now, I was off last week. I was visiting Philadelphia. Lovely, lovely Philadelphia. Have you ever been to Philly?
I have.
Okay, what'd you think?
Yeah.
It's pretty terrible, isn't it?
They at least got some great food.
Oh,
but
I had so many cheesesteaks.
Oh, they're amazing there.
Yeah,
But that's about it.
Right. So I had great cheesesteaks. I went to Podcast Movement, which was a podcasting convention, and I learned a ton of great stuff. A lot of you won't see a lot of changes, but there's going to be some subtle things that I might do differently now that I'm an expert, having gone to Podcast Movement. But as I was in Philly, I couldn't notice a common theme that I've seen in Boston and New Orleans this year, which is homeless people. And basically a general smelling of trash. Not the homeless people, maybe. I didn't get that close. But Philly has a distinct smell, and it smells like garbage. Not as strong as New Orleans, but definitely a trashy smell.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the homeless people in Philly, I got to say, they do it right. Like, they're next level homeless. It's like in Indianapolis, our homeless people are just kind of like, they look pathetic to get money. But, like, in Philly, they were giving me a show. Like, Brian Nichols of The Brian Nichols Show lives in Philly, and he was basically like, yeah, this one guy cleans my car. Every time I drive by, he pees all over it. And then he expects $1 or else he won't let me leave. I'm like, oh, all right. But
wow. So
I was walking down the street, and I had an earbud in, and he's, hey, Big man. They always call me Big Man. I'm sure you get that too.
Yeah.
Like, which is not like gonna ingratiate. Calling me chubby.
Yeah, I'm probably not gonna get you anything.
Right. And so I just ignored. I didn't make. And he goes. I hear him say to his buddy. He goes, "Man, kids these days got headphones in. They can't hear nothing." And his buddy immediately yells, "Snake! Snake!" Which I thought was very good. So I go on another walk the next day, and I end up in a CVS, and I'm buying some Claritin D because I have allergies and pollen and all kinds of issues now. And as I'm walking out, there's a guy in there who's kind of like running around, and he's yelling about his backpack, and he's clearly got some issues, and he's very upset about them stealing his backpack. Well, so I walk out again. I'm getting ready to leave, and the guy basically jumps the counter, steals the backpack, and starts running towards me. Now, I'm a hero, Mark. I don't like to brag, but so I basically like stand there, and I'm a big boy. I'm 280, 6 foot tall, and he was smaller than me, and so he started charging me, and this employee from CVS runs out, tackles him, like puts him in a police hold. It was the most badass thing I've ever seen from a CVS employee in my life. But it was truly amazing. And so I just kind of stood over them because he had something in his shoe, like a razor blade. So I figured 2 was better than 1, and so like every time he'd go for a shoe, I'd like smack his hand, and then the guy would readjust. And so he was doing all the work. I was just looking brave. But that is the second time this summer in New Orleans I ended up having to call the police because another homeless man was threatening to kill me and was like sharpening his knife, and it was just a whole situation. Chasing women down the street. It was very like brutal. And so, you know, I forget what it was, but it was in the last couple days where I was just like thinking about this, and I was just disgusted. I was like, ugh, why is it so dirty? Why are these gross homeless people everywhere? And I thought, you know, those may be people.
They are people.
They might be people, and I should probably not have that attitude. And
they are people.
And I think it was I was watching something about San Francisco, and in San Francisco, they have a huge problem with homelessness right now. And, you know, you've probably seen the stories about feces. They're rated as dirty as like Indian cities because of all the human feces that are going on in San Francisco. And I was just like, man, why is this happening? And so as I was thinking about this show, I was thinking about my own callousness towards these people. And I was thinking, like, how does somebody end up there? Because when you look at the people that I interacted with in these major cities and in Indianapolis where I live, it's always males usually. And you don't see a lot of homeless women. But it's generally men, and they usually have some sort of, mental issues. And so I wanted to talk about homelessness tonight. Now, why would I invite a rhino like Mark Warner on? Mark, why would I invite you on wearing that abysmal T-shirt?
Well, first of all, it's not abysmal. It's kind of pretty, actually. If you look at it, it's kind of stylish. So you did invite me, and I was happy to come on. So I worked at Wheeler Mission downtown in Indianapolis for close to 8 years.
Right.
So I spent a lot of time with the homeless community, spent a lot of time with the agencies, with city government.
You went on to work, leaving Wheeler Mission to go work for the mayor's office.
Yeah, a couple of years later.
In a neighborhood capacity, were you doing anything with like homeless issues at that
point?
Yeah,
so my area was actually the Broad Ripple area.
Okay.
So the north side. So I dealt a lot with Broad Ripple area, their issues. Meridian Kessler, that area, there was just a lot of issues.
Kind of inner city for those who are out of town, yeah.
Yeah. So you're right, Chris. These are people.
Yeah.
And these people end up homeless for numbers of reasons. Some are drug and alcohol related. Some they lost their job and fell on hard times. Some are they came out of jail and they don't know how to function in society. And there's some down there that have been homeless for, I bet you and I could walk downtown tonight and I could point out 3 or 4 people that I know that have been homeless for 20 plus years.
Sure. Yeah. It becomes a lifestyle.
Yeah. It just becomes a lifestyle. And there's really only thing you can do to help them is outreach teams and homeless shelters is try to get them inside. If you can't, you try to give them the things that they need just so they can survive out there.
Right.
And so working with that population, you learned a lot about them.
Right.
Now, you're right. There are some guys downtown that are problems, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Sure.
There's nothing you can do about it.
But be it intentional problems or, I mean, I've had several run-ins with homeless people downtown. You know, I was 20, I mean, I was a Republican then, so it was pre-2004. It's probably 2003-ish, and Bill Frist, the Senate Majority Leader, was at the Rhino headquarters over there speaking, and so I got a suit. Now, I was in college, so I had, like, no money, and so I had cashed in all my change. My account was overdrawn. I had cashed in all my change to buy a a Speedway gas station hot dog for lunch. And so I had to find free parking, so I parked a few blocks away. And I walk over to Bill Frist. I'm wearing a suit, and this guy kind of manages to get me alone, and then looks like he starts talking to me, and I'm not really paying attention to what he's saying. And then I realize he's talking to me, and so I look over and he's like, "Give me your wallet." And I go, "Give you my wallet? What do you mean?"
I'm a broke young college kid. I don't have a wallet. I got ramen noodles.
I'm white. How dare you, sir? No. So I go, "Give you my wallet?" He goes, "Yeah, give me your money." And I look down, and he's got a knife. And I go, "Oh, sir, I don't have a wallet." And he goes, "What do you mean you don't have a wallet?" I go, "I have no money." Well, hold on. And so I literally take my pockets inside out, the Hoover ears, and I show him, and I go, oh, I have a dime. Here, you can have this. And I walk away, and then it hits me and he just looked at me so confused because, what kind of balls this kid has, insult me with a dime. And I walk away, and I go, I should run.
Yeah.
like what? I mean, because, in his brain, I'm insulting him by handing him a dime, but in my mind, I'm like, "Here, you can have my last 10 cents, sir." But I didn't even realize I was being robbed. And then, that was the final straw. About a few months before that, I had decided to take a guy to Steak and Shake. He was like, "I'm hungry," and "Oh, gee willikers, sir, you're hungry? Let me feed you." So I take him into the Steak and Shake, and then the police had to be called. And when I checked out, the Steak and Shake people were not happy with me. But I was like, he was hungry. And so, you feel compassion towards some of these people, but you can get yourself into some dangerous situations.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes people don't know, my personal rule is I just don't, I don't carry cash. I don't give them cash.
That is actually a good rule to follow.
I
think everybody should follow that. I mean, yeah, it's your money. You have the freedom to do this, right? But you're not helping.
Yeah, so
you're not helping
let me ask, because I always scan the podcast world for topics on what we're discussing, and there are no podcast episodes about homeless people, or homeless policy, I should say.
Really?
Nothing. Nothing. The closest thing I could find was an Econ Talk episode about homelessness in San Francisco. And they were talking about how, I always give them money. I want them to feel dignity. I want them to... But to me, I have a different definition of dignity. Coming from a background of addiction, I don't believe in enabling. I feel... So
yeah.
Let's start here, okay? Let's start with the interactions that we have with homeless people and how it's seen on the other side of the fence, okay? So you're walking down the street and someone is panhandling, meaning they're asking for money, or there's somebody who is clearly maybe a little inebriated, or there's something going on and they're talking to you. What is the mindset of a person who is in that state on average? I mean, Mark is not going to give us the specifics for every person, obviously. Right. But in general, when somebody is on the street panhandling, and what's it like on the other side of that interaction? So
I think looking at this and looking at the people that are down there panhandling, here's how I respond to them. A lot of times I will just walk by them. Because one, I know them.
Right.
I know them. I know what they're going to do, and I know how they're going to be.
Explain that.
So some of these guys are drug addicts and alcoholics. You give them $1, they're going to find a way to make it $10 and go get some booze. Okay? Or go find some drugs.
So the whole racket about "I'm hungry, can you give me money for food?" by and large, you've, in your experience, that's just hokum.
Most of the time, that's not what they're going to do. The way to respond to that sometimes is to say, "Hey, what do you want to eat? And I'll go get you some food and bring it back to you." 70% of the time, they're going to say no. They're going to say no. So what I've done in the past is I've gone, when I'm done in the restaurant, and if I have leftovers, I take them out and I hand them to them.
Okay.
I've had a guy throw the food away before. After I turned around and walked away, I watched him and he threw it in the trash.
Right.
I'm like, dude, what are you doing? I just gave that food to you.
Right.
But a lot of their mindset is people for ever have given homeless people money on the streets.
Right.
Because I just want to give and I want to feel good and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, you're not helping. You're not helping them by handing them money.
Sure.
You're enabling them to go use. Well, that's not my problem. If I want to give my money, that's fine. You're right. Freedom, right?
Right.
But you're not helping them.
Right. Because you're just perpetuating an addiction.
Right. But then you're the same person that complains about them
right.
at the same time.
Right.
And it's like, well,
you immediately walk away and text to your significant other, oh, I was just bothered by a homeless man.
I just gave him $5, but hopefully he'll leave me alone. No, he will not leave you alone.
Yeah.
He will not leave you alone. And those guys, they're not stupid.
Yeah.
They have their people pegged, and they know.
And having worked downtown for several years, and being fairly naive in the beginning, I noticed that I started to attract a whole line of beggars when I walk in because
they got you pegged and they're going to follow you. They're like, "Hey man, what you doing?"
Because it's once you give to one, then it kind of perpetuates a lot.
That guy over there, man, he gives good money.
Right. So that's, it just seems like a stereotype though.
Yes and no. The homeless people you don't see are the ones in the camps.
Right.
You won't see them.
Okay.
They're loners. Outreach teams see them. The IMPD homeless outreach team sees them. Whatever. They're loners. Or they'll come out on Saturdays and they'll get their handouts that churches come down and do.
Sure.
That's another conversation.
So there's different types of homeless groups, groups of people?
Because some of these people that are panhandlers aren't even homeless.
You're kidding.
No.
What do they do?
It's a money-making scheme.
Really?
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
Especially the ones on the exits that stand on the exits.
Like where cars drive by?
Yeah.
Because then you don't have that time to have like an interaction.
No.
It's just...
They're just like, here you go.
Right.
Here you go.
So I've always heard
some of those
that.
guys will make hundreds of dollars
I saw a Dateline where basically it was like $100,000 a year. The guy's driving away in a Cadillac.
Yeah.
Right.
They're not like... Some of these people aren't homeless, and then some of them are.
So you're saying that if you're in the city center of... pretty much most cities, a lot of the people that you're talking to aren't necessarily without homes. They aren't necessarily living on the streets.
Some of them are, some of them are not.
Okay.
I can't give you a percentage of who is and who isn't.
How prevalent is that someone is just a panhandler who is just trying to make money?
On the weekends?
Yeah.
Probably half.
Okay. So what are the different, like, varieties of like levels, I guess is the way to put it, of homeless folks that you've interacted with? So
what do you say that again?
So there's the panhandlers that you're talking about that aren't necessarily homeless, but then there are the people in the camps. I mean, are there different locations? Like, are there different? If you were to kind of categorize the homeless community, how would you do that?
So when I was at Wheeler, we worked with outreach teams.
Okay.
And we went out and talked to them.
Let's define what Wheeler is.
So Wheeler Mission is a homeless shelter, and I don't want to use homeless shelter because that isn't what they're designed to do.
Sure,
they're designed to get people in and back out successfully.
Right.
So they have an addiction recovery program.
Right.
They have a work program to where if you don't have a home but you have a job, you can stay there for free while you save up your money and get successfully back on your feet.
Right.
And so homeless shelter just sounds, it's just a shelter.
19th century Dickens type.
Yeah, and it's not that.
Right.
It is not that. They are designed to get people in the door, help them succeed back into the society.
Right.
Regardless of whether or not they were, whatever the case is, they're designed to help them get back on their feet.
Right.
And so, and they have some major successes with it. Learning about Wheeler Mission, I would encourage people to do that because what they do is they help people.
Sure.
So, for example, what I did is when we went out with outreach teams, we would go to campsites and we would walk around downtown, and we would know the homeless people. Like, we knew those people
because
we had relationships with those people. They saw us coming. They knew what we were there for, just to talk with them.
They estimate in San Francisco, I think it was either 35 or 6,500 people. Like in a city in Indianapolis, where you've got 2.5 million people in the metro, 1 million in the main county in the city of Indianapolis, you're probably talking about a couple thousand people.
So
which doesn't seem irrational that you would kind of get to know, if you're working with that population, you get to know folks.
Right. So on any single given night, and I'm getting these stats from Wheeler's website, on any single night in Indy, 1,682 individuals are homeless.
Okay.
580 of them were females of all ages, children to seniors. Okay. We'll get back to that in a few minutes.
Gotcha.
But so what we would do is we would go out, talk to these guys, and be like, "Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing out here? Do you need help?" And it was us, the Homeless Initiative Program, Horizon House had an outreach team, the Poor House, and then Outreach Inc. A bunch of us,
nonprofits. There's not a city-run shelter.
No.
All right.
There is no city-run shelter here. And so we would go out every night and we would talk to the guys and we would reach out to them. And we would just talk with them. Hey, what can we do to help? Why don't you come see me tomorrow? Why don't you come see, what's his name, Gary tomorrow at HIP? Come and see us. Let's see what we can do to help you get off the streets.
Right.
Some of those, it took time to build those relationships, build trust. Once we got that, they would come in, they would get help.
Right.
But some of these guys will not come in because of rules, or they're loners.
Okay,
they don't want to be around people.
That's a question that I've asked you before that has blown my mind. When I've just flat out said, like, it's 4 degrees outside, and I'm walking past guys who are sleeping in archways. Like, why are they not in Wheeler, Mark? Why are they not going in there?
They do not want to come in because they do not want to follow the rules. And in winter contingency, and that might have changed some since then, but winter contingency is designed for people to get inside and stay safe and stay warm.
Okay.
And the rules are laxed, but
right.
They expect, come inside, lay down, go to sleep, wake up in the morning, get some breakfast, and you're out the door.
But in general, what are some of the reasons the guys won't go in and just stay in the shelter flat out?
Rules. One of them is rules.
Okay, what are some of the rules?
So you can't bring alcohol in.
Okay.
Weapons. No weapons are allowed. Mm-hmm. They can't keep their personal belongings with them. They have to put them away and locked up.
So you basically just go to your bed without, like, when you say personal.
They bring their backpack in,
right,
or their bags in, or whatever. We put them away for them. They would lock them up.
Gotcha.
And they would just lay down and sleep.
Gotcha.
Okay. Don't bring that stuff. We have to lock it up.
Yeah.
It's not just for their safety. It's for the safety of everybody else, including staff.
And that stuff can get stolen too.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like it's protecting you. At the same time, it's protecting us.
Right.
And the other residents inside this building.
You mentioned shoes once that I thought was really interesting. That they don't want to take their shoes off. They want to keep their shoes on.
Yeah.
Why is that?
A lot of different reasons. Yeah. They're either embarrassed or whatever it is.
Right.
They don't want to take their shoes off.
Mm-hmm.
There's a good story here because there was a guy that used to sleep where Wheeler Mission is on Delaware Street.
Mm-hmm.
He used to sleep in front of one of the attorney's offices at night. So one night I just went down there and said, "Look, how long have you been out here?" He goes, 20 years. I said, "Isn't it time to come in?" And he's like, okay. What I did is I went down every night and saw him.
Right.
For a month. He finally came to me one day. He goes, "I'm ready to come inside." This was after 20 years of being homeless.
Right. Is there a stigma to going, when you say going inside, that almost sounds like a 12-step religious type. There's,
they don't
like crossing that boundary is some sort of mental thing.
I think it is. Because if you've been out homeless for 20 years, this is all you know.
Right.
And they're scared.
Mm-hmm.
They're scared of what's going to happen because this guy, for example, just fell on hard times and he had no one to go to. And so he just took his belongings and went outside, and that's where he lived for 20 years.
Right.
After 6 months, he had his own place. He had a job at the VA, and he was a greeter at the VA. So when veterans came in, he greeted them, told them where to go.
Right.
And he was doing great. And
Sure.
he don't know where he's at now, but he was successful after 6 months.
Right.
But it took someone to believe in him. And it took someone to tell him, look, you're better than this. You don't have to do it. Now, he made the choice to come in finally and get out of that mess.
Sure.
Okay? But there's some of them that will not do it. There's someone who just won't do it.
Is it just that you've suffered so many indignities that you just want to completely remove yourself from any other person?
Yep, because there's trust issues there.
Right.
I'm scared because I was successful at one time and then I fell down. Oh, okay. I think we have all done that.
Right.
And there's just a lot of things that are in play there. A lot of it is mental illness. Some of these guys are veterans. And they have that battle going on inside of them.
Sure.
Some of them have had relationship issues and they just don't know how to deal with it. Right. And after so long, they just give up. And they're just like, okay, I'm done.
You sent me a study, Baylor University.
Yes.
And I thought that it was interesting. In the beginning, it was a major cause of housing is a lack of affordable housing, which is why you have such a high number in San Francisco.
Right.
The not to get into federal issues, because I've been asked not to, because of some rhino's current job. But you have various levels of government, for environmental reasons, usually shrinking the amount of available land.
Right.
And then that rises prices on the land, which rises home prices and rent prices. And then when you have attractive places like Silicon Valley to move to, and you also have regulations that don't allow you to build new homes. So there's like 35,000 people that have moved into San Francisco over the last few years, and 7,000 homes, and it's because they have such crippling regulations on local home building. And so your supply and demand is off. Your supply is so low, your demand is so high that the prices rise. And it's usually caused by the government, which then leads to people not being able to afford homes, so they go out on the street, and then, we need a government program to solve this homelessness. It's like, okay, let's not
government is not the answer to solve this problem.
Okay. Let's wait for solutions. We'll get there.
Okay.
Because I want people to understand the intricacies of the problem first. How did you end up getting involved? Because, to me, I should go volunteer with homeless people, but I didn't wake up this morning and decide to go volunteer, let alone go work with that population. How did you make that decision to go and do that?
I hit a time in my life where I struggled, and I sought out help. Mm-hmm. And that was one place that was really there for me at the time. And I got to know these people, I got to work with them, and I just fell into it.
Yeah. Empathy.
Yeah.
You saw yourself in a lot of these guys.
Yeah.
Right.
And so when I started getting in this, and I started seeing real life, and some of these people that I've worked with when I was there, I worked with people that lived in Carmel in $500,000-$600,000 homes. Mm-hmm. Beautiful wife, beautiful children. Was very successful. Started using drugs. Fell down, gave up, walked away from it all. Came in, got help, got back on track.
Sure.
Some of these people came out of prison. Some of these people they got arrested one night,
Right.
and they lost their job and lost everything.
The reality, having worked with Rupert's Kids over the years, is you've got people that are low income, so they sell drugs because that's the only way to make money in their area. Or they were drafted into the family business. They get arrested. They go hang out with better criminals for about 6 months. They get out, and then they have $170 in weekly payments for their ankle bracelet. Well, nobody's going to hire them because they've got a felony. So I guess I'll steal to make, because I'm not going back to jail. And then they get caught for a higher charge, and then all of a sudden, they're 25 and coming out of jail, and they have no prospects whatsoever.
Right.
And there's no community within their personal family that is able to support them, because grandma was making the $170, and that's not a pejorative. I'm saying it's literally, it's on the women in, especially the black community. And so it's a huge, huge problem. The war on drugs hits lower. It hits all the rungs of the ladder, because it's either the people buying it or the people who are selling it,
right,
and the people who are using it. So what you're saying is homelessness really doesn't care about where you're at on the socioeconomic ladder.
No. So homelessness doesn't care if you're from a poor community or a wealthy community.
Right.
They don't care if you're from Carmel, Indiana, Greenwood, Indiana, or Jasper County, Indiana. They don't care.
Yeah, meaning a hoity-toity rich area, suburban Indianapolis area, or just a rural country area.
Yeah, there's homeless. Homeless is a problem all across this state.
Right, all across the country.
Yeah. I mean, Greenwood has a homeless population.
About 30 minutes south of Indianapolis.
Yeah.
It's real close to where I live.
Yeah. So they have a homeless population. Plainfield, Indiana, Avon, they have a homeless population. These places, these people, you don't, until you sit down with them and listen to them, you won't know.
Yeah, so I thought in that study what I was saying is one service provider said people don't become homeless when they run out of money, at least not right away. They become homeless when they run out of relationships.
Yes.
And I thought that was an aha moment for me, because you go, how does somebody become homeless? Well, we all know in our own lives somebody who just has an overwhelming amount of situations where you're like, I don't know how that person's going to make it. I don't know how they're going to do it. They've got medical bills. They've got a sick animal. They've lost their job. They have health issues. Like, how is that person going to make it? And they make it because family let them move in for 6 months. But what happens when you don't have family? What happens when you don't? You listen to Amanda's story on We Are Libertarians. I was trying to make sure I didn't say Amanda's real name. But, Amanda made it through and it's because she had friends and a couple family members who were willing to kind of give them shelter.
Right.
A domestic violence victim who is being hunted. Not a lot of people are eager to open up their doors to let that person come and move in.
Right.
And so what happens 6 months down the line when they can't hold a job because the boyfriend's coming in and causing all kinds of trouble? Yeah, I mean, so it's, and these are people who it's very easy to kind of slip into that lifestyle without, because it's like you're in a hotel and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm out of money. I can't afford the hotel.
Yeah. I mean, I can remember guys coming out of prison. And we'd work with the DOC all the time. Like, hey, do you have a bed next week? We got a guy coming out.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a young man. He was 19 when he walked into or 20 when he walked into the mission. And he was a sex offender.
Mm-hmm.
And his offense was when he was 18, he slept with a 15-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And he got charged with as a sexual offender. This kid has no future.
Right.
Right? If you looked at the situation. But he didn't let that hold him down. His family disowned him. Everybody disowned him. But he refused to let that wall hold him back.
Right.
And he was he's successful now.
Right.
Very successful, and has it off his record now. After so many years, he got it off his record. he's successful now.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the end of the day, his parole officer would come and meet him every week. And one day his parole officer looks at me and goes, I have no idea why I'm dealing with this. I was like, why? What's going on? And he goes, this kid. What 18-year-old hasn't slept with a 15-year-old? Like,
well, me, but
I mean,
you know what I mean?
But he's like
right.
Yeah, but look at it.
For a parole officer who sees all kinds of offenses, I get it.
He goes,
I
don't know.
Right.
This is a waste of my time. It's a waste of his time. This kid's life is over. But he refused to let that be over. Right. And so, but this kid didn't grow up in the east side or the west. He grew up in Fishers.
Right. A very suburban, white bread, upscale town. Yeah.
Right. So it doesn't care. It does not care.
Right.
And so I think people only see what they want to see.
Mm-hmm.
They don't go in and see what they actually should see.
Sure.
So that's kind of where that is with homelessness. It doesn't care.
Mm. So what kind of services are there for people who are homeless? And when we say homeless, I mean, are we talking about people specifically without a home? Or are we talking about the population that you probably dealt with? Like, define homeless for me. We probably should have done this minute 5, but whatever.
No, that's fine. Homelessness is where you don't have a set address. That's the definition.
Okay.
By standards.
Rhino fluids.
Standards. But that's the
standards. You choked up on standards.
So, yeah. So, for example, you are couch surfing to a friend's house.
Right.
And you don't have a home to go to every night. Like, you're here and then you're over there and then you're over here and then you're over there.
Right.
I'm pretty sure Jeremiah would not take you in, but that's just me.
Jeremiah Morrill?
Yeah.
The boss hog?
Yeah.
He doesn't have a choice. He's on my network. I basically
You own him?
I rule with an iron fist.
Oh, okay.
I could cancel that show any moment I wanted to. But yes, but yes, let's use Jeremiah as an example. The boss. I show up at the boss hog's door and he says no.
Yeah. You can't stay there, so then you go to Aaron's house, right?
Right.
And he'll let you crash on his place,
right,
on his couch.
Yeah.
And then you go to someone else's house the next night. You're considered homeless.
Right.
Because you don't have a permanent place to go.
And then I end up at the bottom at James Neese's house.
That would be horrible.
And that's where the drug problem starts.
That's where the drug problems start.
We in our Facebook group, we took a purity test. And Rice University put together like this purity test, and like so the higher the number, the less you did. And so I had a 39, very pure out of 100. James had a 7. He was like, I slept with a girl with the same last name. I'm gonna count it as incest. So good old niece.
Good old niece.
So finally off a Facebook ban. So yeah. So you're technically homeless if you don't have an address.
If you don't have an address, right? So here's where people like Horizon House come in. Okay. Somebody goes to Horizon House, they show up and they say, hey, I'm homeless. I need a place to go. I need help. Their job is to get them connected to services throughout the city. Horizon House would call me a lot and be like, hey, do you have any bed space for these people? Can we need help with this?
Right.
We did it. Right? We would step up and help these guys. And they would work with us. They'd work with Horizon House, and they would work with other agencies to try to find a job.
Other homeless shelters in the city.
Yeah.
Police agencies. Maybe medical or
yeah. So like Horizon House has a medical clinic. Coalition or Homeless Initiative program had a doctor on staff.
Private or public?
Private.
Okay.
Yep. So I think Horizon House and Homeless Initiative program got government grants, but they were still private. They weren't run by the federal government or the local or state governments.
Right.
Right. They were privately ran. They ran on donations, but they did get some grants from like Eli Lilly, the city, federal government, state government, whatever.
Right.
But Wheeler never takes those. they never take government money.
Yeah, because once you do, the strings attached are
the strings attached
compliance,
to it.
And it's just it's a nightmare.
So Wheeler has a medical clinic. They have a dental clinic. They have doctors that come in. They have dentists that come in and work with these guys. The biggest thing that you can do for a homeless person, if they're trying to get on their feet, haircut.
Mm-hmm.
Simple.
Personal grooming.
Yeah.
Right.
Haircut, shave. I mean, just to care for them.
I mean, is there a transformative thing in them that when they come in, they get a haircut, they get a shave, they get a nice new set of clothes, that something in them changes?
Yeah, absolutely, because there are no strings attached to these gifts.
Right.
No strings attached at all. And so these people just want to love on them and help them get out of their situation.
Right.
And that's what it's about. Is to love on them, help them get out of that situation. But at the same time, hold them accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they're going to commit to a program, they got to commit to the rules as well. Because society, I'm on the Libertarian podcast here, society has rules. Right? Society has rules, and we have to follow those rules.
Well, libertarians believe in societal rules, and that there are certain basic ways that, I mean, we're not libertines. So like, especially on this podcast, I mean, there is a conservative nature where I do believe that there are institutions that make society run better.
Right.
They need to be voluntary institutions. They need to be, you should be able to choose if you'd like to participate in those. But there are basic social norms.
But, yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to follow society's rules.
Right.
And if an organization has rules for you to go through a program.
You hear that? What a rhino.
I know.
You signed the social contract. I didn't sign no contract, Warner.
Yes, you did.
No,
you just Libertarians are going to come bouncing through the door here in a minute after me. Why are you having that Romeo? But, there's rules.
Sure.
And so if you follow those rules and you're okay with being held accountable, at the end of the day,
right,
you're going to be fine and you're going to get out of that situation.
What kind of recidivism, meaning how many people did you, during your time at Wheeler, did you see make it versus just kind of continually relapse and fall back down into homelessness? I mean, I don't know if Wheeler keeps a recidivism rate number, but
they do. I'm sure they do now because they have a bunch of data now that they have and they track. Honestly, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah,
I could take you right now to probably 10 different people that I saw go through the Wheeler program and that are very successful now.
It to me doesn't seem like a thing that we have a very paternalistic view about things sometimes, where we think that if we just pick this person up in a van, give them a Queer Eye makeover,
oh my God,
impact their life, say some nice words to them, then they're just going to turn their life around. But it really is an internal struggle.
That is not going to solve the problem.
Right. It's up to them to make the choice that they have to change their life. You can be there, but so it to me is another one of these issues of the heart where it doesn't matter what programs the federal government passes to end homelessness. You're never going to end homelessness unless the person who's homeless decides they want to end it for themselves.
Yeah. You have to make the choice to get back on your feet. Right? You have to make that choice.
Right.
If you don't make that choice, then you're not going to... I can hand you every piece of resource I can hand you, but until you make the choice that you're done with that lifestyle, there's nothing I can do for you.
Right.
I can love on you all day. I can help you with everything. I can connect you to every service possible. But until you're ready... it's not going to work.
Yeah.
It's not going to work.
Yeah. And that's so true of so many different aspects of, it's like fixing your marriage or fixing your weight or fixing your personal situation.
Did you just call me fat?
Yes.
Okay.
No, but like I've struggled with that where I don't want to go out and exercise, but I have to make the choice, like, do I want to be old and sick later? You know, and so, like, I've started running and going out and being more active and, like, trying to eat less and, like,
right.
But it's a constant struggle because you want to fall back into your normal tendencies. You've got to make a choice, a personal decision to better your life in any way, shape, or form. And that's whether you're, you know, the president of the United States or the head of, you know, the Chase Banking Corporation, or if you're a homeless person. Like,
right.
You're going to have to make some choices every single day to be the best version of yourself.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter who's around you giving you support. If you're not going to take care of yourself, if you're not going to make those good choices, then there's nothing we can do for you.
Yeah, I can tell you from personal experience that I've had to make some decisions in my life, and I'm like, okay, it's probably time to...
Yeah, that shirt was a real bad one.
I knew coming on here with this shirt on.
The Republican, I'm glad you did, because it's been, it really highlights the great t-shirts you can buy at wearelibertarians.com now.
Well, I mean, I have a shirt maker, and his name is Omar, and he's a tent maker.
Uh-huh.
So...
This sounds made up.
No, it is. But it sounds good when they're like, who makes your clothes? Omar, the tent maker. They're like, it gets awkward really fast with people. They're like,
right. So I was listening to this podcast, which I will put in the show notes. It's Econ Talk, which is a great podcast, great libertarian-leaning show if you don't listen. Erica Sandberg on homelessness and downtown streets team. It's in the 2017 podcast feed. And so she's on this thing called Downtown Streets Team. And she basically works in San Francisco where they have set up, you know, not a mission necessarily, but an organization where they have a weekly meeting. And you can come to the meeting, they go out and they promote the meeting, they get people there. It's almost like a 12-step type situation without the 12 steps.
Right.
You know, it's like, hey, if you're homeless, if you're dealing with this issue, excuse me, come to this meeting and we're going to get you work. And it's a very positive meeting, and it's basically, you know, what she describes is that people aren't treated with dignity when they're homeless. They don't treat themselves with dignity, and they're not treated with any dignity. And so when they go there and they're met with other like-minded people who are struggling with the same issue, they're given some level of meaning in their life. They're given a job. They're given a debit card with $200 a week on it. And it's all private. It's all funded by local business districts. And so what they do is a local business district, let's say, you know, the Mass Ave Business District here in town, gets together and they say, you know, we want to invite the homeless into our community, and they're going to beautify Mass Ave. So what they do in San Francisco is the homeless people are in charge of cleaning up the streets. They come to this meeting, they're given this debit card, but they're also given brooms and mops and power washers and like equipment and work. And then if they continue to do the work, they continue to get their card refilled. And so the city is turning their homeless into a workforce, and it's all private, it's all a gift, it's tax-free. And in the meantime, they're given financial counseling. They're given psychological counseling. They're connected with dentists. They're connected with various, you know, groups that want to help them lift themselves out of that poverty. And they have a very strong recidivism rate of people not coming back to this program, because once these guys start working, once they're given a purpose, once they're given a sense of dignity again, then they're not... They don't. People, I firmly believe, and you can back me up on this, these guys don't want to sleep on the streets. They don't want to be homeless. There is probably a percentage of them who, if they're aware they're homeless,
small percentage.
It's a small percentage. It's a lifestyle. That's the hobo lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, so there is I mean, what is the percentage of the hobos versus the mentally ill versus the guys who are just on hard times and will get their stuff together if possible? I mean, in your experience, obviously this is not a global thing, but
I would say 10% want to stay out there.
Right.
And I would say the other 90% are a mixed bag of mental illness, / with veterans issues, drug and alcohol related, or just fell on hard times.
Right.
And they have none of those other issues.
Sure. But those guys who are mentally ill in this program get connected to people who can help them and get their meds regulated. And, like was it you that told me something about homeless guys in medicine and like they specifically won't take their meds?
I don't remember that.
I mean,
but there are some homeless people that if they get help and they start taking their meds and they don't like how they feel, so they just quit.
Right.
And they fall back onto their old lifestyle.
Right.
Look, it's tough. It's tough because mental illness is a serious, serious issue that we're facing globally.
Sure.
Not here, not in San Francisco, but globally.
Right.
And I'm not a fan of medicine. Like, I'm just not. I think you got to be careful of how you prescribe it because I think.
What about Viagra?
I don't have that problem. Do you?
No.
Okay.
I would take it, though. I hear it's great, but even if you don't have a problem. So if any of you listeners want to hook Uncle Chris up, I'll DM my address.
No, I think...
I was just trying to find like an embarrassing medicine, but you turned that around on me really well. It's like broadcasting with Rob Kendall.
Yeah. But listen, I think the reason we have this opioid crisis is because we're just handing out medicine.
Right.
Just because. And that's not the cure either. I have always said, and I will continue to believe it, that it comes down to a heart issue. It always comes back to the heart. And if your heart isn't right and you're not corrected, if you correct your heart, so that's the beginning.
So earlier you said that government programs of any type just aren't going to help. Why did you say that? I mean, for a rhino, that was a pretty...
Listen, government is not the answer on this.
Okay.
It's just not. And the reason is because, one, you would have to, especially on the local level, you can't get the state or federal government involved in this because it's just not gonna work.
Right.
One, you would create more bureaucracy and more red tape.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason for that.
When red tape and bureaucracy has a factor in causing the problems.
Yeah.
Be it the housing crisis, PTSD in soldiers, be it
right.
mental illness.
So for example,
I mean, a large reason that we have a homeless crisis is that we closed down mental hospitals in 1980. I mean, they're in the 80s, we just started shutting down orphanages and homeless shelters, and I'm not advocating for their return because they obviously had their problems, which is why they were shut down. But those people that, our previous generations felt were just undesirables, that they didn't want to be around, they warehoused them.
Right.
And then, now, those undesirables, quote unquote, are on the streets without any kind of structured help. And I think there's a real problem that nobody wants to have a discussion about how to structure the solution because it's uncomfortable. But there are just people who are mentally ill, for instance, that need help. And so how do you structure a system in your local community that can actually help those people? Because it's a human condition. It's the human condition. It's just always going to be there. And you're right. Once you start involving the federal or state or even the local governments can be great. Your city councilor can be great in helping you navigate bureaucracy or find local.
Absolutely. They're there to help you, guide you through that process.
They're good at kind of helping you figure out where are the resources in your local community. So if you wanted to get involved in homelessness in your community, you could start with your local city councilor or the mayor's office, or there's nothing wrong with that because there are community leaders who can connect you with private organizations that can really help you.
Here's where I think government takes a role. Okay. They talk about it. The leaders start talking about it.
Right.
And not afraid to talk about it.
Yeah.
So Senator Jim Merritt, is a perfect example of someone who is not afraid to take on an issue and discuss it.
Yeah, local state senator who is the Marion County chairman, which is the biggest county in the state of Indiana, heck of a nice guy,
Yeah.
great tan, very bad on drugs, but I have a lot of respect for Jim Merritt nonetheless.
But he is not afraid to take on that issue.
Sure.
Right? He's not afraid to discuss it and bring it to the forefront. And look, you can give a lot of people different credit, but Jim Merritt brought the opioid crisis to the forefront.
Sure.
And it's being discussed now.
Something like the Lifeline Law. I mean, Merritt was
Right.
instrumental in passing that. Where if you're a college student or a high school student, you're under 21, and someone is overdosing on a substance, you can call the police, and you will not get in trouble.
Right.
And so Merritt has been instrumental in.
So that's where I think government can take a role.
Right.
I think they can take a role by bringing it to the forefront.
Sure.
And talking about Horizon House, Wheeler Mission, Homeless Initiative Program, they can talk about these organizations in their public presses.
Right.
Right. And I'm not saying Mayor Hogsett doesn't do that, because he has been very instrumental in talking about Wheeler Mission and showing up at their events and talking about the importance of fighting back. But it's not enough.
Right.
They have to talk about it, because downtown, I worked around the homeless population for 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
I was downtown not too long ago, and it's gotten worse.
It is. It's significantly worse than when I worked downtown 6 years ago.
Yeah, and it's gotten worse. And the problem is, the problem we run into is leaders don't lead on it.
Right.
I'm not saying they have to solve it, because if they start trying to solve it in the city county council, they're going to just mess it up.
Sure.
Let's be honest. Okay, they're going to mess it up.
When you stop arresting people for defecating on the sidewalk, you end up with a city the size of San Francisco with massive mounds of defecant.
Right.
On the
You've got
sidewalk.
it. And look, IMPD addresses this well. Their downtown homeless outreach team is amazing. And they've been doing it for years, and they're just a bunch of great guys.
What makes them amazing? Like what kind of work do they do?
They go out with the outreach teams and talk to the guys who are homeless.
Mm-hmm.
They just talk to them. They don't try to arrest them. They don't go through their stuff. They don't do none of that. Okay?
It's the sense of, and this is a salient point from a rhino like yourself on a libertarian podcast. The sense. The sense of the police just constantly hassling people, be whatever community, they're just on my back. It's the Eric Garner, I can't breathe. It's the systematic feeling of oppression from police officers, and so it's very smart to have a task force in a city the size of Indianapolis. Top 12, 10 city.
Yeah.
Where you've got police officers who are not just outgoing. You're not treating them like a paramilitary force. You're having them go out and do community policing.
And they've been doing it for years.
Right, which is the whole point of community policing, is that we're there to have a presence in your community, so Officer Jones, and so you can go and talk to Officer Jones. And, if you get arrested by Officer Warner, then Officer Jones can come and be an advocate, and because you have a relationship.
Right.
And, it's like that's the whole point of community
and
policing.
The thing
so that is good.
Is these outreach teams, along with IMPD, they go out and they talk to these guys.
Right.
How can we help you? Do you want to get off the street? Here is a card with services on it. Go get some help. Like, what can we do? Now, look, if they're causing trouble and they're defecating on a business sidewalk or on a business door, right?
Right.
They have a job to do, and they have to arrest that person.
Yeah. You're violating someone's property.
Right.
You're putting lives at risk. Yeah.
You got to do that.
Right.
But these guys, these men and women of IMPD that do this homeless outreach and the community policing, they're top notch. I mean, they have done it for years, and they are really good at it. Excuse me. And so government has that answer to that problem, but they need to get more aggressive with pushing people towards giving towards Wheeler Mission.
Sure, private organizations.
Right. Look, we can't solve this problem, but these people have been Wheeler Mission 125 years of working with the homeless community. Come on.
Yeah, in every city, you're going to have, and like if you're in a small town, there's still probably going to be, maybe through the Catholic Church, a local outreach to the poor. I mean, the Catholic Church is a great place to start. If you're interested in issues of poverty and reaching out to people who are in trouble and at risk, the Catholic and the Methodist and some of the mainline churches are really good about that. But Evangelical and Baptist are kind of catching up in that kind of hands-on stuff. But like the founding of Methodism really was about social good as opposed to individual good. So churches are a great place to start. Your local representative of any level may have some resources if you're interested in helping get involved. If you don't have, you could research the Downtown Streets team, figure out how they did what they did, talk to people who work in that organization, and start that in your own community. Yeah. And you could immediately, within a year, start impacting people's lives in a very significant way.
There are so many different ways that the community can do this with government helping to promote it. I mean, you can have a press conference all day, right? But until the governor, mayor, or wherever you're at comes out and talks about it in reality. Mm-hmm. Not, we're just going to hand out food and clothes and just no. We're not going to just hand out money and free healthcare for all and none of that crap. Right. We're going to help these people become productive members of society again.
That was one thing that Erica Sandberg said about the San Francisco homeless camps is stop bringing them food. They are begging people to not bring food anymore because what happens on these hot days, people come and they throw sandwiches out the window because they don't want to have a real intimate conversation with a homeless person, but they want to feel they've done something. Maybe as they're chucking it out their window, they're taking an Instagram photo to show they did good. But those sandwiches just sit there, and then it attracts flies and maggots and mice, and it just makes the whole situation for those folks even more desperate. Even though it's very good intentions, it's like it's not the right way to handle it. There's
a ministry that I know that goes and feeds the homeless once a month. Mm-hmm. And they asked me to be involved. And I respectfully said no. And they asked me why. And then I gave them the why nots that I wouldn't be involved. Mm-hmm. And they didn't like the answer. I'm like, well, you're not helping these people. Sure. Take those blankets, take that food, take those clothes to Wheeler. Right. Because when these guys and these men and women get the help that they need, they're going to become productive members of society again. Right. Let's do this. Let's help these people. Have you heard about, so Wheeler has this 125 campaign going on. Mm-hmm. Have you heard about the stuff that they have on the sidewalks in downtown Indy? No. So they have put these massive cleaning things on the sidewalks in downtown Indy all over the place. Mm-hmm. It's called Wheeler125.org. And they are raising money to build a new women's shelter to add more beds. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Which is desperately needed.
Right. Yeah. It's desperately needed, and people don't realize it.
Because in the opioid crisis, middle-class white women are the number one victims of the opioid crisis. Yeah. And then secondly, there's not enough beds for domestic violence victims. Like if you look at the Julian Center, in Amanda's story, she had to wait a couple weeks to get into the Julian Center. Which is the domestic shelter. And this is happening everywhere. This is not an Indianapolis problem. This is a global.
It's everywhere.
See local listings.
So in Indianapolis alone, 580 were females of all ages, children to seniors.
Out of how many?
1,682.
Okay. Wow. So that's a pretty...
80% were fleeing domestic violence.
Wow.
128 families were homeless, and 4 homeless women were pregnant. That's on any given night in Indianapolis.
Right.
And this is unacceptable. But you know what? People don't give towards stuff like this.
Sure.
If you and I were to get scraggly beards, okay, straggly clothes, and they took a picture of us, put us on a mailer and sent it out, people would pour in the money. But you put a woman on there with a child, nothing.
Why is that?
I don't know. To this day, I can never figure that out.
Is it because
this is a problem?
It's because
I don't know. I think it's
having been around victims of domestic violence, there is a large percentage of people. It is not the overwhelming percentage, but there is a percentage of people who, one cop told a friend, if you just shook your boobs at him longer at the window, or multiple cops said, well, what'd you do to him? Or, women will go, well, she's probably just crazy. I don't know how many people, as I've tried to help friends over the years, like, what's wrong with her? So I do, it's a huge obstacle to women getting help in situations where, they're just not believed.
Right.
And like,
that's a problem.
And so I had a situation where someone was here and the guy was outside. And I basically said, if you don't leave, I'm going to call the cops, and the cops are going to charge you with criminal mischief, trespassing, and listed off the charges. And he immediately left because he knew he wasn't afraid of me. He was afraid of the cops because he knew that the cops didn't listen to her, but when they listened to me, he was going to get charged.
Right.
And that is the crazy thing about domestic violence, is that if I'm standing there advocating for the woman, the cops are going to pay attention. If it is the woman saying he hit me, it's like they don't listen. They're not, women are not believed by many police officers and law enforcement officers, and it's very troubling. And I don't get the mentality, and it costs thousands of lives a year. I mean, the third biggest in gun deaths every year. The first is suicide, 75% is like suicide, mostly white males.
Right.
Second is gang-related, drug-related violence, and then it's women who are killed by domestic abusers. I mean, so. And it's a pretty significant amount of women. So, because when you have some of those situations, there's two types of domestic violence abusers, right? There's the guy who gets drunk, hits a woman, feels bad about it the next day, may not do it for 6 months, but there's no real threat.
Right.
Then there's the coyote, where it's a spiral, and that person is hunting, and eventually, in 95% of cases, it leads to one of them getting killed.
Right.
And where do these women go when there's not a shelter open? When the shelter doesn't have enough beds for her and her kids, family and friends don't want to take these women in. Yeah,
they're just as scared as the women are.
Because I mean, having been kind of a shelter in some respects, when they find out where you live, it gets real fucking nerve-wracking.
Right.
And so It is. It's not surprising to me that I mean, that's a definite need, and
well, and that's that's why Wheeler's doing what they're doing with this 125. They're 125 years old. They have a massive need.
Right.
Massive need. They are at capacity every night. That's with their programs, with just the overnight shelter. They are at capacity.
Why do you feel we're a less? I feel like we're a less generous society than we were 30 years ago when we were growing up.
I don't know.
Is it more demands on our attention?
I think there's just so much out there. There's so many different needs out there.
Right.
That they just don't know what to give you. For example, my church, where I go to church, Grace Assembly, that church gives. Okay, last year alone, towards missions, and that's every mission.
Sure.
The lady working with the pro-life community, the people working with the homeless, whatever it was.
We building schools in India.
Right. Right. $682,000.
Right.
Record giving year for missions for us. And so I don't know. I don't understand where people, and I think a lot of it is they don't know where to go.
Right.
Or they're blinded to the issue. Some people just don't want to look at the issue.
Sure.
Like, if I don't look at it, it'll go away. No, I promise you, that growling dog next to you if you walk away, it's going to follow you. It's going to eventually bite you.
Right.
That problem is not going to go away. And homeless has been a problem for many
time. Yeah.
But it's getting to the point where these organizations need our help and they need our funds to help them reach these people.
Yeah.
And get them back into society.
Well, part of it is that you have the internet, and so every charity has a marketing strategy. And so human tragedy is marketed all the time. And so, but this is the demands of a libertarian society. If you want to live in a libertarian society, your time, money, and attention demands that you help. I mean, you don't have to. Nobody's going to force you to help others.
Right.
But if you don't want to live in a world where people are crapping on the sidewalk, then you're going to have to play a part in making sure that there's affordable housing and that there's, issues of that there's institutions that can help with homeless and make sure that they get what they need.
And that's the thing. It's like, I don't look at this as a Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, whatever issue, okay? But I go to some of these events and I see these people and they're big givers.
Right.
Big givers. And some of them, a majority of them, are Republicans. And I've reached out to some of my Democrat friends and hey, give to Wheeler Mission.
Yeah.
I would encourage you to give to Wheeler Mission tomorrow. And someone okay, great.
Sure.
Because at the end of the day, they see the issue.
Mm-hmm.
And if more of us pushed more of those people to that forefront, it's like you look at my social media, I do not talk politics on it hardly anymore.
Sure.
Because it just turns into a shit show.
Sure.
I'm going to start pushing Wheeler stuff on there.
Well,
because I want people to start giving towards that.
Right.
Because that's going to help solve that problem.
Yeah, so part of it is, I don't know, people don't want to deal with the ugly business of life, but
right.
But it's here.
I get it.
All right, so final. Let me ask you this: are you willing to talk about Mike Pence at all?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So here's what
depends on what you want to talk about.
Well, I'm gonna leave it there because I'm gonna do a teaser. So here's what I'm gonna do: we're gonna give our final thoughts on this episode.
Okay.
And then for our Patreon subscribers, as bonus content, I'm gonna ask Mark, who you did what for Pence when he was governor.
So I was the political director of State Party.
Okay.
Under Jeff Cardwell.
Right.
And then I worked inside state government with Pence. And then when he ran for governor, I was on his road team.
Right. So you've worked really closely with Mike Pence. You're partially responsible for him. That's why I call. That's why it's really. That's why I saved this for last. But I want to ask you a bunch of questions about Mike Pence. So we're going to do that in the bonus segment. So if you want to hear an insider's account of Mike Pence and what he's truly like, then you're going to have to sign up at Patreon, patreon.com/wearelibertarians. And $5 a month or more, and you get to hear all kinds of bonus content. We're going to do more and more bonus content, part of the restructuring of what I learned. But as we end here, just give your final thoughts on homelessness and how people can get involved in their local communities. I mean, this is a national show, so you can't just say Wheeler. So,
right.
If you're in rural America or wherever you are, how are some ways that people can get involved in this issue?
So I think a lot of the things is you can work with your local churches. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing you need to do. Reach out to your local churches and find out what they're doing to help.
Right.
And if they're not helping, get them involved to help.
Right.
Okay. Reach out to any local Salvation Armies, soup kitchens, food banks, whatever it is. Reach out to them and see how you can get involved.
Sure.
There's ways to get involved. Money, volunteer, time, whatever it is, give.
Right.
Okay. The other thing is when you're walking down the street and a homeless person's like, "Hey man, you got $5?" Be like, "No, I don't have $5." But sit down next to him and spend 5 minutes with him. If you have 2 minutes, spend 2 minutes with him. Because that can change a person. Doesn't matter. If they're cussing you out the whole time, it's just like, hey, I hope you have a great day.
Right.
So if you walk out of the restaurant, hand them your food. The worst they're going to do is throw it away.
Sure.
But if that person says, wow, that person just gave me a to-go bag of spaghetti or whatever, wherever you're coming from, that could change that person's life.
Right.
So, get involved that way. Don't give them money. Don't go down and hand them a blanket just because.
Right.
Just get involved with your local community somehow.
I'm a firm believer that people who work with that community, in any community, it doesn't matter what the issue is, the best way you can help on any issue, and you've worked in politics a long time like I have, it doesn't matter if it's an environmental issue, if it's a gay marriage issue, if it's a gun rights issue, if it's the homeless, if it's a charitable issue. The people who do things on a day in, day out basis for a living are going to be better at it than you.
Right.
And the thing that they need more than anything is money. They need resources. They need volunteers even. And so, like, don't create your own program. Go attach yourself to other programs.
4th of July is a perfect example. Wheeler Mission didn't have any volunteers to help serve a lunch. So I went down and served the lunch. Go down and serve a lunch.
All right. Mark, if people wanted to follow your rhino ramblings, where can they follow you?
So they can follow me on Twitter at mwarner95.
Okay.
Facebook, mwarner95.
Every Friday, we have
and Instagram, mwarner95.
I don't care what Trevor says. I started it.
That's not true.
No.
Trevor actually started it.
No, it's not true. I started it.
Trevor started it.
No, I don't believe you. And you two are liars. You're both Republicans. Make fun of Mark Warner Friday.
On Facebook.
Every Friday for years, almost a decade at this point.
Yeah, I deserve an award when it comes to a decade.
Every Friday, someone makes a horrible meme about poor little Mark Warner, about what a rhino he is. He's a very, rock solid Republican, but it's just funny. When you go around to people, make fun of you, call you a rhino now, as you go to, state party functions? Has it caught on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
What do you think of Rob Kendall?
Listen, you asked me that earlier. I don't have a problem with Rob. Obviously, we had a difference of opinion this past primary, and that's fine.
And Rob's annoying, isn't he?
Rob can be, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, if I were to sit down with him across the table, he's different.
Oh, Rob's a great guy.
Yeah, Rob is one of those guys where you just got to go, okay, it's Rob. It's like what Abdul says about Rob. Rob is that little brother that you got to love.
No, you don't.
You don't. But he's a good guy.
All right. Well, we got to wrap up. Before we go, thank you, Mark, for coming on.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. I want to thank Christy Avery, Craig DaCosta, Jason Doolittle, and Brandon Luke for being our $100 a month Patreon subscribers. I want to thank two very special people, Craig DaCosta again, and Scott Smith, for donating off of our Amazon wish list, which you can find at WeareLibertarians.com. They both sent some cables. Scott is the person who is part of the... He sent the mystery cable. There was... you can leave a note, and he didn't leave a note, so I'm glad that I finally found out who sent us this very expensive cable that makes us sound very professional and very good. He was rooted out by Jordan, who is helping with some of our Patreon. She's our membership manager. And so if you're a Patreon subscriber, then you are helping. You will be contacted. Let's put it this way by Jordan. So she asked what would she be doing, and I said you're going to be nice to people who are very nice. And she goes, I can handle that. So couldn't be a better volunteer project. All right, we've said a lot. I think we've solved the issue. I think we have single-handedly taken care of homelessness on this podcast.
It's going to end in 6 months.
That's right. We've set a time limit. Get out there and volunteer and end homelessness in 6 months.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys, and we will see you on Thursday. We are going to be talking to our good friend Rob Quartel live from Washington, D.C., live to tape. and Rob is live from the swamp. So basically, you may not know this, Mark, but I was on a trip to Washington, D.C. I got stranded in Philly. This very nice gentleman walked up to me. We started talking. We drove the next day to Washington, D.C. after we got stuck in Philly. He was the issues director for the Ford campaign, for the HW 80 Bush campaign.
Wow.
Helped write some of the regulations that Reagan implemented in the early 80s. One of the first employees at the EPA, Council on Foreign Relations, Economic Forum. Like, he lives in the swamp. He's a very iconoclastic person, which is why he's willing to talk to us on a Libertarian podcast. But he's been a fly on the wall for a lot of different things over the last 45 years as he's lived in D.C., and so we do a series on the podcast called The Swamp Explained, where we have somebody who has lived in the swamp forever kind of explain how things work in Washington and give his perspective on things. So, he knows Paul Manafort really well, and so he kind of gives some insight on Paul Manafort. So you'll have to tune in on Thursday. And
to do that.
We'll explain the swamp. And he talks about the Jones Act, which I don't know if you know about the Jones Act, but it's about shipping. And it is the most ridiculous. I didn't know anything about the Jones Act until he walked me through it. And it is, you will be outraged. You will go, this is why government is a cancer. You will, when you hear about the Jones Act, you will scream taxation is theft. So tune in Thursday for that. And until then, we'll talk to you later. All right. So, Mark,